people still want a Mirror's Edge, and EA have no interest in it because it just doesn't make money, or it doesn't make enough money. And that's the thing with these games companies. They don't want to make money, they want to make all the money. Hi everybody, and welcome to High Scores, High Stakes, the podcast that wants to be AAA, but lacks the budget. I'm your host as always, Mr. Luvva Luvva, and with me is... Nobody. Once again, it has been impossible to tie up all of our schedules and get more than just me onto the recording. So you're stuck with just me in what will undoubtedly be a truncated, shorter than usual episode, where tonight I am talking about a topic that has been on my mind for a little while now. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the importance of indie games in the industry and whether or not they could potentially save the industry. But before we get into the topic of the show, let's tell new listeners, because as we are all well aware now, every episode is somebody's first episode. So let's tell those new people who we are and what we do. First and foremost, hello new listeners, how are you? But we are High Scores, High Stakes, the internet's only competitive PlayStation podcast, where myself, Tomahawk, and Cardinal Smith compete against one another in PlayStation gaming challenges, where every week we pick a game and play a challenge in that game. The winner of the challenge gets 3 points, second place gets 2 points, and third place gets 1 point. Whoever is top of the league after 12 weeks wins the highly sought after, the highly anticipated, the High Scores, High Stakes Cup, which, as I said to you last week, is not going to be decided tonight, obviously. The finale has had to be pushed back, but it is coming very soon. Probably not next week, but certainly the week after. Certainly the week after. But yeah, this is the part of the podcast where I usually ask my co-hosts, what are you playing? But like last week, I'm going to put the question out to you, listeners. So write a little comment down below and tell me what you're playing and whether or not it is good. I have been playing 2 indie game titles. So I have. Most recently, I have been playing Mixtape, which is a game I've been looking forward to since its trailer at the Game Awards or Summer Game Fest, whatever it was. Without giving too much away, I'm not going to spoil anything for you. It's excellent. It is an interactive movie that is extremely well written. Like, it is extremely well written, and it is an absolute stunner. It looks absolutely beautiful. And the other game I've been playing is a game that I have been playing for quite a while now. It started off with the pre-release alpha beta build, and recently I got my hands on the pre-release pre 1.0 build, and that is Dead as Disco, which, if you don't know what Dead as Disco is, it is a rhythm based beat 'em up. So you play you just run around beating up mobs and mobs of enemies in time with the beat of the song that is playing. It is incredible. It is a brilliant game. I don't want to tell too much, but keep an eye on our YouTube channel, where I will be putting up a full review over the next few weeks. But it is an incredible game. And let's talk about then the topic of the show, which is, of course, are indie games. Slowly but surely, have they now taken the place of AA games? And can they save the games industry? Let's not waste any more of your time. Let's get straight into that discussion right now. Okay, before we get into this discussion then, let's take a look at the current state of the games industry. Okay, I think we did a games industry talk in January 2025 where we just could not believe what was going on. So let's take a look at what the 3 major console manufacturers have been doing since 2024. So let's start with the ones closest to our heart, Sony. Let's take a look at what PlayStation done since 2024. Okay, so since 2024, Sony have done the following, and these are not exhaustive lists. These are just the headlines I could remember. All right. So since 2024, Sony have laid off over 1,100 employees. They have increased the price of the PlayStation 5s 2 times. They have closed Bluepoint Games, Dark Outlaw Games, London Studio, Firewalk Studios, and other studios as well. Those studios that haven't been closed, like Bend, have seen massive layoffs. And then finally, and most recently, Sony have taken a $1.1 billion bath on Bungie and Concord. Now let's take a look at the green side of this party, Microsoft. Okay, so Microsoft since 2024 have increased the price of all of their hardware, including Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S. And they have increased the price of Game Pass before walking that back in the very recent times. But don't forget that even though they walked back the price of $29.99 a month, Game Pass still costs more now than what it did 1 year ago. They have replaced their entire management team. They have cancelled so many games. I'm not even going to list them, but they have cancelled so many games. They have also had massive layoffs, and I think by my count, it's about 2,500 employees. And then most recently, they have removed COD from Game Pass because it wasn't offering enough value. What that means is nobody was buying it because they were getting it for free. And then finally, Nintendo. Let's look at what Nintendo have done. Now, Nintendo are, as we all know, they are unique in the gaming console space. They seem to be a lot more resilient to industry changes, but they're not immune to them. So since 2024, Nintendo have done the following. They have released hardware, which was the Switch 2. When they announced it, they didn't announce a price. And that is because of tariffs in America. So they announced their hardware, but had to delay their price announcement by, I think it was 3 months. Then they announced the price of it, and it was more expensive than the original Switch. And then, very, very, very recently, they've had to increase the price of their hardware. Less than 1 year on the market, it has already had one price increase. And of course, Nintendo are at the forefront of charging £80 a game. Good old Nintendo. Good old Nintendo. Okay, so why is all this happening? Well, the big reason that all three companies have given for all these things that they've been doing is market conditions. I love it. Due to market conditions, we've had to fire thousands and thousands of people because of market conditions. We've had to take Concord off the sale after 2 weeks. Market conditions are the buzzword for all of these games company. And to be fair to them, there is some truth to it, but a lot of the truth of market conditions come from their own decisions and things that they have decided to do. So let's take a peek. Let's lift the curtain of game development, okay? So game development since the PlayStation 3 360 era has, by orders of magnitude, increased. So now what we're looking at is for a high budget AAA game, they can cost development and marketing in excess of $300 million. Apparently, I don't know how much truth this is. Apparently, Concord, which was on sale for 13 days, don't forget, cost Sony $400 million. That is insane. So what does that mean then for games? So what it means is that for games to meet their sales, their internal sales expectations, games have to sell now tens of millions of copies to make a profit. That's the sharp reality of it. If a game costs $300 million to make a market, then it must make $400, $500, $600 in order to be profitable. And what that means is that a lot of games just aren't meeting that because of other business decisions that these companies are all making. Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Nintendo Online all offer free games. So people are these game companies have, especially Microsoft, I want to put Microsoft in the forefront here. They have devalued their own games and are shocked when they don't sell for 70, £80 when they first come out. But the biggest thing I think has caused all this issue is every single one of these major publishers, these games console manufacturers, have killed double A games. Like, double A games, for me, were the linchpin. They were the glue that held a games console's library together. For those of you who don't know, double A games are similar to triple A games, but they sort of differ in a few key metrics. So I tried to explain this in my own notes, but I had to go to Gamepedia to get like a proper definition. So Gamepedia say that AA games are typically developed by teams of 50 to 100 people, and with budgets ranging from 2 million to 10 million. But they add the caveat that sometimes these AA games can cost 50 million, which is still a lot of money. But they balance their quality and cost, which means that they don't need as much resources, they don't need as much people, they don't need as much time to make. And it also means that because the risk associated with AA games is much, much, much lower, then experimentation is the order of the day. If you want to play interesting and new games, you kind of have to avoid AAA, especially in 2026. I'm a great believer that the video games now are of a generally much higher quality than what they've ever been. But let's stop and think about it. How many times in the last, say, 10 years have you stopped playing a game and thought to yourself, man, I am bored of all of these games. They all feel so similar. Everything has been standardized to a point now in gaming where it doesn't matter what game you're playing, they all kind of feel like the same. And what that is one, we're not kids anymore, and we've lost that magic of video games. Remember when you were a kid and every game was amazing? But that's the void that AA games have left. Once AA games stop being made, the void there's no one filling it. There's no one filling it. And AA games aren't new. They're really not a new phenomenon. They've always existed. Way back when, even in this 8-bit era, the 16-bit era, there's always been AA games. If you think back to the Sega Mega Drive, for every Sonic the Hedgehog, there was Wiz and Liz, there was Dizzy, there was Tasmania, there was all these games that were similar in scope, but obviously made for much, much less. But I think the consumers' recognition of a AA as a game standard really came to prominence in the PS3, Xbox 360 era. But that was really the last time. During, if you can't remember the Xbox 360 era and the PlayStation 3 eras, you have to remember that both Sony and Xbox were really pushing for indies. You know, Xbox ran the Summer of Arcade sort of promotions where they would have 4 games over 4 weeks release on Xbox Live Arcade, and that gave us games like Explosion Man, like Braid, loads and loads of them, Turtles in Time, Reshelled, all that sort of business. Some were great, some weren't so great, but they were indie games made to fill the void of the AA's. And once the PS4, Xbox One eras rolled around, that was it for them. All these major developers, all these major publishers needed far more people, far more hands at the pump, and far more money and time to make their AA games. Now, the Xbox 360, PS3 eras, budgets were still pretty big. I think games were costing about 100 million to make, but in the Xbox 360, PS3 eras, on the PS3, we got Uncharted 1, Uncharted 2, and Uncharted 3, all on PlayStation 3. And I think they were separated by about 2 and a bit years between each installment. On the Xbox 360, you had Gears of War 2, and Gears of War 3, and Gears of War Judgment all came out in one console generation, which was 7 years. It was still, even though budgets were starting to increase, it was still possible to make these games with 100, 200 people on the team. PlayStation 4 and true HD console gaming meant that resources were far more stretched, and something has to give. And all these games developers, publishers decided that it shouldn't be the quality of the game, it should be the quantity of the games. And that has sort of compounded upon itself, where now we're in a position where games developers are releasing one, maybe two games per generation. If you think about the PlayStation 5 has been around now for nearly 6 years. Naughty Dog are still to release an original game on the Sony PlayStation 5. Insomniac have released Ratchet and Clank and Spider-Man 2 on the PlayStation 5. We're now in the era of 6 to 7 years in cycle to make a triple A game, and because it just requires so many people now, you're not making games with hundreds of people, you're making games with thousands of people. The next time you complete a triple A game, sit back and watch the credits and see how long they go for. They're about 20-25 minutes long these days, because there's so many people from all around the world helping to make those games, and they're gone now. If you think right now we could play Saros. Let's just go with Saros, the most recent Sony first-party game to release. If you want to cleanse yourself from Saros with another game, there's not much to choose from when it comes from Sony first-party developers. there's really not. But if we compare the PlayStation 5 situation to the PlayStation 2 situation, so let's just say you needed to cleanse your palate after Metal Gear Solid 2, you could play these mid-tier games like 13, Okami, Hitman, Eco, SSX, Gregory's Horror Show. There was so many mid-tier games that were completely different to what you've just played. Whereas nowadays you don't want to play Saros because you're finding it very, very, very difficult. What are you playing? Are you playing I don't know, Helldivers 2? Do you know what I mean? They're all very, very similar now. But if you delve deep into the PlayStation Store, you will find games made from indie developers, smaller titles. And there's still plenty of indie developers out there. There's still tons of single developer games being made from bedroom coders. But they are the ones that are releasing the games at a really steady rate. So they are your palate cleansers. Indie games, whether they're from a single developer or a team of like 10 to 50, are releasing so many games, and so many games that are extremely high quality. If you think of indie developed games since 2020 and go on to Metacritic and look at the scores from them, the games that have, and these are only a handful that I've handpicked, if you go and look at games since 2020 that have got a Metacritic of 85 or higher, the amount of indie games that are on that list is absolutely frightening. Here's a handful of the indie games that appear in that list: Dispatch, Hades 1 and 2, Hollow Knight, Silk Song, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Blueprints, Split Fiction, Kingdom Come Deliverance, Balatro. So many of these games, and they are all completely different to what the triple A developers are making. These are your experimental titles. These are the titles that palate cleanse you from those big titles. Yes, there is similarities with them. They all have voice acting. They all look great and they all play well, but they are the games that are creating the foundation to the entire games industry. The indie games are the teams that are out there that are releasing those pure experimental, dare I say it, more video gamey games. These indie titles aren't afraid to be video games, whereas AAA games are hell-bent in becoming Hollywood-esque. I think we have the term, I can't remember where I've heard this from, but someone, games are trying to be cinematic, where games should really try to be game-matic. I don't know where I heard that. I've heard that fairly recently. I thought it was a great line. And these indie titles are the games that really, really, really just want to be great, great video games. And the best part of all this is where your AAA games have to sell hundreds of millions of copies, and most of them aren't doing it. Indie games, because they cost so much less to make, often by one person in a bedroom, they don't have to sell as many copies in order to be a success, in order to fund that developer's next game. But here is the rub. Gamers are buying indie titles in droves. I was doing research for this episode and I looked at Steam's 2025 sale breakdown, where they just sort of take all the games and put them into tiers of, this is the percentages of these games that sold. And if we take the top 25 selling games on Steam in 2025, half of them are indie titles. Half of them are indie titles from tiny teams, from 10, like Team Cherry, Silksong, and or Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong both appear on that list. Hades 1 and Hades 2 both appear on that list. Balatro appears in that list. Blueprints appears in that list. There is just so many games from indie developers that are selling millions and millions and millions of titles, of copies. If you even look recently, Slay the Spire has sold like crazy, like 20-30 million copies. It's insane. Even if you think back to September when Silksong released, Hollow Knight Silksong was such a big release, it crashed PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, Nintendo Store, and Steam, because so many people were trying to log in and were trying to buy that game, and it caused every major games buying platform to crash. That is how big indie games are now. And even if I look at my own games playing habits in 2020, the latter end of 25 and into 26, the most recent games I've played aren't from Sony's first parties at all. They're indie game developers. This year, at tail end of last year into this year, I have played and really enjoyed things like Ukulele. I have played I Hate This Place, Cairn. What else have I played this year? Dead as Disco, Mixtape, People of Note. All these games have come from indie developers that have cost a fraction of what it takes to make Uncharted. And that's, to me, I find myself drawn a lot more to these indie titles, because as good as AAA video gaming is now, and it is great, as I said near the start of this episode, AAA games quality has never been higher than what they are in 2026. All you have to do is look at the reviews for Resident Evil 9 or Pragmata or anything like that. Video games are great. They are great from all sizes. It's just indies are required. They have really stepped up and they've filled the void that AA games left behind. I have had more fun playing games like Dead as Disco than I have playing a AAA game in years. I know it sounds really pretentious, but it's not. I don't mean it to be that way. It's just these games are video games. They are unashamed to be video games. And in my opinion, these are the games and the game studios that will have longevity. I mean, just last week, maybe the week before, was the news that Sony have lost $700 million since buying Bungie. And I have no doubt in my mind in a few weeks, we will be hearing the news of either Bungie being closed or Bungie experiencing layoffs. And that's not what I want to happen. I think Bungie are a legacy developer, and I think they deserve leeway as much as anyone else does. I don't want to see a games company spend 5 years making a game and then it comes out, it doesn't sell quite as well as what the internal projections were, whatever they are. They never tell us what those internal projections were. And then the game developer just disappears because it's cheaper than just funding another small title for them to make. But indie games are definitely becoming the foundation. They're selling tens of millions of copies regularly now. They are winning games of the year. All you have to look at is what Claire Obscura did in 2025. It won every major game of the year award. and it is an indie title that what cost $60 million to make, sold 8 million copies in its first 3 months, I think it was. Everyone was playing it, everyone was talking about it because it was something different. If you remember, Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, and the backlash was this should be turn-based, and Square Enix said that turn-based role-playing games just don't have a place in the market anymore. And you've had like Metaphor ReFantazio prove that wrong, Unicorn Overlord prove them wrong, and then Clair Obscur prove them wrong in the biggest possible way. All of those have come from indie developers. So the indie developers are listening to players and doing what players have been asking for a very long time. Please give us those games that we miss. Are we ever going to see an SSX game again? No. All these big publishers and developers seem to have stepped away from any meaningful AA game development. If you think back to the PS3 era, every games publisher was releasing AA games. You had EA, for example, Electronic Arts released things like Mirror's Edge, and you had Ubisoft with the Ubi Art Engine release games like Child of Light. Activision were releasing smaller scale titles as well. They were all doing it and just decided this is too expensive to make our big games. We don't have the resources or the money or the inclination to make them. And now we are in a position where indie games developers are coming and eating their lunch. And I'm happy for it. As we watch AAA games developers be dissected and then buried by their owners at an alarmingly frequent rate, there's going to be no AAA developers left if we continue on down this line. There has to be a point where these big developers and publishers go, we need to make more mid-sized titles. And you are starting to see the sprouts of that realization. Even if you look back to 2024 with Helldivers 2 from Sony was one of the biggest selling games of the year. And it was certainly Sony's biggest and only success from their live service game push from 5-6 years ago. You also have Microsoft, Xbox, whatever you want to call them. Microsoft released South of Midnight last year. And whilst it didn't score extremely high, it still wound up in the high 70s, low 80s on Metacritic. And it was a critical darling. And the players who all played it seem to genuinely love it. Even Nintendo have never been a massive AAA developer, but like things like Donkey Kong Bonanza and stuff like that are mid-tier. That Pokopia and all that there business, that everyone seems to be waking up and realizing, actually, why should we be spending 8-9 years making one game where we can have teams of 50 people make these smaller games and sell them for $29.99 or $19.99, or for Nintendo $49.99 with the Star Fox remake that they're releasing fairly soon. But I think we need, every healthy entertainment industry needs tent poles. Absolutely. Tent poles are what fund everything else. But gaming has forgotten that for a very long time, where every title is a tentpole title and they are not funding themselves and they're taking a wash far too often, and people are paying the ultimate price with their jobs and livelihoods. So tell me what you think. All right, are indie games forming the foundation of the games industry, and are they eating the lunch of the big publishers and big developers? They are for sure the lifeblood of innovation and difference in the games industry at the moment. And I'm hoping that Sony, that Nintendo, that Microsoft all wake up, smell the roses, and realize that we need to bring back the AA game. And whilst I vaguely and lovingly remember the days of, oh, this game is a 7 out of 10, that means it's bad. You will get more 7s out of 10s, but the risk and the reward of it is night and day. Well, where's our cult hits recently? Has there been any from a major games publisher? I don't think so. All the cult hits seem to be indie games, and that was not always the way. EA Mirror's Edge is possibly their biggest cult hit ever. I mean, it never sold particularly well, but we are 8 or 9 years removed from the sequel to that game, and people still want a Mirror's Edge, and EA have no interest in it because it just doesn't make money, or it doesn't make enough money. And that's the thing with these games companies. They don't want to make money. They want to make all the money, to quote Jim Sterling. They want to make all the money. And my For You page on X, there are at least 3 indie games developers making Mirror Edge likes, and they all look fairly decent, and I will be playing all 3 of them. Will I buy any AAA games in 2026? Yes, I will definitely be buying Resident Evil. I will definitely be buying Pragmata, but not before I play these games that are completely different, that they have heart, that they have soul, and they're not ashamed of being video games. Will Resident Evil 9 Requiem bring me the same amount of joy that Cairn brought me? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. Will it bring me the fun that I had with Ball Pit, or that I'm currently, having with People of Note? I don't know. But I doubt it. I doubt it. Will any game in 2026 from a AAA developer bring me the sort of emotional impact that sort of Mixtape is bringing to the table? I don't know. It's possible, but the thing about People of Note with Mixtape, with Cairn, is those 3 games cost me less than what it would have cost to play Resident Evil Requiem. And I feel that my gaming year 2026 has been far more varied than what 2024 was, 2023 was, or 2022 was, or indeed 2025. And that's the long and short of it. If you want variety, if you're getting a wee bit bored, if that feeling of all games feel the same these days, if you've got that right now, my advice is go to the store, pick up a indie game that you like the look of, but you're not sure whether or not you will like it, and give it a go. Give it a go. In the era of Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, and all that, most of these games are there anyway. Just pick a game you like the look of, or you like the sound of, but you're not sure about, and give it a go. I guarantee you, it will refresh you, it will rejuvenate you, and it will reignite your love of gaming. And that's what indie game development is all about. And let's move on over to the AAA section of High Scores, High Stakes, the wrap-up section. Let's go. And that is it, everybody. Another solo episode all wrapped up. Hopefully, I didn't drone on for too long. Hopefully, you enjoyed the ramblings of a madman. That I tried to give this a little bit of structure. I have notes that I have utilized throughout this. But hopefully, you will tell me in the comments below of what indie games do you think people out there should play? And are you playing any indie games at the moment? So leave a comment. Tell me, what indie game would you recommend to everyone should try? And what game you're playing right now. So let's get the housekeeping out of the way. If you've enjoyed High Scores, High Stakes, and you want to give us a rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, 1 star to 5, whatever you think we're worth, that's what you get. If you want to give us a written review, that's even better, because that feeds the algorithms and tells Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that more people should be shown this, and it gets more eyes and ears on us. If you have done all of that, yet you still haven't shared us with a family member or a friend who you think will enjoy this podcast, do that now. Or I don't say you're listening to this on a mobile phone anyway. So hit that share button, open WhatsApp, open whatever app you use to message people, and send them a link to an episode that you have enjoyed, and say, here, I think you might like this. Let's get more eyes, let's get more ears on us. If this 30 minutes episode isn't enough to fill your week, why would it be? Head on over to highscoreshighstakes.com. That's where you'll find every episode we've ever done. You will find the video versions. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, you want to watch a video, you'll find the video versions of every episode. And every game we've ever had a challenge in, we have mini reviewed there. And there is lots and lots of more coming. And there will be a redesign of that website coming up, I would say fairly soon, but I don't know. It's been it's been a hard start to 2026. And with all that being said, next week is looking like it's probably going to be another side quest. Hopefully, I won't be alone for that one. I'm hoping that we can get Tomahawk onto the record that this coming week, and we will get season 6 wrapped up sooner rather than later. But it's not going to be next week, folks. Apologies, but it is coming. It will be a banger. We will find out who the season 6 champion is going to be. It's going to be me. I know it. I can feel it. And the finale, to make up for the wait, will be an absolute treat for everybody. So with all that being said, I've got nothing left to say, except I'll be Mr. Luvva Luvva. This has been High Scores, High Stakes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday. Love you all. Bye.